You know, I had been a fan of Herbie Hancock's, man, for so many years. You know, growing up here in New Orleans, I had listened to all of his records. And when I got a chance to meet him, I was just overjoyed. And then I started working with him at the Monk Institute. And working with him at the Monk Institute for about the last 6 or 7 years has been serious education for me. Because with Wayne and Herbie, like this weekend, I'm going to go up to D.C. for the Monk competition. And when I'm around those guys for a weekend like that, we constantly have musical conversations. And I'm always learning from them, learning something that I haven't learned before, or they're opening my eyes to certain things. And when I looked at the band that I have, you know, a lot of the many directions that this band can go in, you know, he was the first person I thought of in terms of finding somebody to produce the record. And working with him was a total joy. I mean, it was an amazing thing to witness. I mean, Robin was so amazed by it. You know, she called a family member of hers and just flew out. She said, you need to witness this and just watch what these guys are doing. Because to have a person like Herbie Hancock tell us, he said, well, who's playing like your band? You know, we never thought, you know, you try to be humble in this business, you know, and you never want to think of yourselves as being, you know, on a certain level. I mean, we're always trying to get better, but we're always trying to be honest about what it is that we do too. And when a person like that makes a statement like that, it's a truly humbling and experience, and is also a great honor. You know, I mean, he constantly questioned us, you know, in terms of what it is that we were doing. Why are you going to play that ballad that way? That, you know, people always play ballads that way. Do something else. Do something different, you know. And I find myself thinking about those sessions that he did with Miles, and I felt like I was in the same situation, because here it is, this is a great musician just telling us to trust yourself and to be yourself. He said, you've done the work, you guys have come along, now just trust it. And I tell you, it was interesting because one night, you know, he started talking to us about the Plug Nickel sessions. And I forgot what tune we did. I think it was Kendrick's tune. We went on and did a take of it, and the band sounded very much like the Plug Nickel stuff. And we started laughing because, you know, we knew exactly right at that moment that we had been influenced by this conversation, and we knew we had to we were like, hey, time out, cut, let's do another take. So we took a break, and then we started really relying on what it is that we like, what it is that we're about, and the things that Herbie told us. And we went back in, and the music sounded totally different. And that from that point on, I think everybody in my band has been totally changed, you know, in their artistry, because, you know, we've kind of, you know, been blessed by somebody like a Herbie Hancock, who's come along and say, you know, you guys are on a path. Make sure you stay on that path. You know, and that's been our whole thing, just to try to find our sound, our rhythm, you know, our colors, and not be afraid of that, and embrace it, and have as much fun with it as we can.
He was great, though. Just in terms of business, I mean, you think of Herbie Hancock, and he's an icon, and he went into the studio without any paperwork, and when I got the paperwork, because the record company said, oh, you guys are crazy, Herbie Hancock will not do that project because the budget is not going to be big enough for Herbie's fee. Herbie asked for 1/10 of what his fee usually is, and he asked for producer points that aren't recoupable against Terence's account with the record company. And he made it so that his advance isn't recoupable against Terence's account. And for Herbie Hancock to do that was just, the record company was blown away. I mean, they couldn't believe that. They had never seen anything like it. We had never heard anything like that before. And, you know, just a dream on so many levels. Of course, you know, Terence, like you said, creatively and artistically. And then for me, in terms of business, I did the deal with his assistant, and then his assistant had it translated by the lawyers. It's the easiest thing that you could even think of.
To just give you another idea about what it was like, you know, I always tell a story too that, because I think it's important, you know, when we were recording the album, we would start the sessions at 10 a.m. and we would go to probably about 10 p.m. But Herbie was such a force, you know, to be around. He would hang in the studio, man, to about 2 a.m. and we would just hang talking about anything. You know, he's a computer geek and he loves cars, so we got a lot in common, you know. And we would talk about cameras, race cars, just all kinds of stuff, music, and it was truly a joy to be around him because his openness translated into to our approach to playing, you know. And when he sat down at the piano, that was a totally different type of lesson, you know, because the entire session was just filled with lessons, the entire session, you know. And I always say that, I'm sorry, I always say that I wish I could put all of the takes on one CD, you know, because they were so different in their approach. He's truly an artist, you know. He's not going to play the little lick he's rehearsed a million times. You know, he's going to try to come up with something that makes the music work, you know. And if he tries something and it doesn't work, he moves on. And if he tries something and it does work, he still moves on, you know. And that is humbling, you know, because when you see somebody who has that ability and that openness and willingness to do that, it really puts your own musical approach in check.
It must have been a fascinating experience. So it had to inform your own teaching, right? So it changed you in more than one way.
It changed me in so many ways because, you know, I looked at formal education as a means of getting everybody to do the same thing. And working with Herbie, he made me understand that that's not necessarily the best approach for certain artists. I mean, look, we all need to learn fundamentals. We all need to learn theory and all of that stuff. But when you talk about being creative, some guys have very different things to say. And you have to appreciate that and embrace it. You know, sometimes, you know, and the thing that I've learned as a teacher is that I don't get everything my students do. I don't get it at first, you know, because they'll come up with things and I'll say, man, what is that? And I'll ask them to explain it. As long as they can explain it to me and it makes sense, I'm with it. And then next thing you know, I start to understand where they're coming from. You know, like the class that I have now at the Monk Institute, these guys, their rhythmic sense is off the chain. I mean, you know, the stuff that they write, you know, in terms of how they displace rhythm is totally, it's extremely unique. And they don't even realize what they're doing. They're just doing things. And they come to me, you know, nervous, you know, with this nervous look on their face, like I'm about to tear their music apart, which I do. But I'm also very amazed at what they do. And I learned all of that from being around Herbie and Wayne, you know, just talking to them. Because those guys are so open. And that's the thing I think you really need to understand. People, you know, tend to think that when you get to a certain level, these guys are like, oh, I'm Herbie Hancock, you need to step. No, they're totally the opposite. You know, they're very open individuals. They're interested in trying anything. If you come up with something that intrigues them, they say, hey man, let's try it. We'll never know until we try. And I love that, you know, because when you approach not only music but life that way, then sky's the limit.
It's true.